This is a Fisker Karma and it's billed as an environmentally friendly luxury saloon. Fisker say that they want to help move people from A to B with beauty and purpose. Beauty and purpose, so Scarlett Johansson on the school run. Really quite an impressive machine from the front. It sort of hints of Jaguar to it with these F-type style headlights, and then when you move around the side and look at it from this angle, there's a whole hint of Maserati to it with these great flared arches over these enormous 22-inch wheels. Despite the body being all aluminium and space frame, it's actually a very heavy car, around 2,400 kilograms. But we'll forgive it that because it's got cool things like this beautifully embedded solar panel in the roof. And I believe that these are coming in sort of two parts, and it looks like it's curved glass, but actually that's just the effect that it's been given. And the solar panels actually sit flat, and then they put this curvature over it. Now, these don't actually power the two electric motors at the back, they're just used to power all the auxiliary items, so the fans and the infotainment system, stuff like that. But it's still a very cool and futuristic idea nonetheless. You're thinking, why haven't more car companies done this? Clearly, lovely sunny day today, and with cars sat here, it might as well be used to sort of charge up and power those things. We go from the cool and the innovative to the downright baffling, because down here, behind the front tyre, is where the exhaust fumes come out of. So the exhaust is plumbed through here, not to the back of the car, because that's where the electric batteries are. The motor is in the front here, the exhaust is here, which then sort of blows out the fumes underneath the driver's window. It's all very odd really, isn't it? Now, I mentioned the wheels a little bit earlier on, and they are absolutely massive. 22 inches these, and they're not a sort of super low profile. They've actually got a little bit more depth to them, which is great because then you don't have this really harsh ride. However, if you do need to replace them, finding a set of 22s is not the easiest job. Right, now come up here. We've got what looks like the fuel filler cap, and that's actually where you plug in and charge the batteries, which are in the back of the car. Then the other side, we've got another one, and this one here won't open now, but this is where you fill up with fuel. Whoa, blimey, was not expecting that. I mean, a boot's a boot's a boot, isn't it? You could probably just about get a set of golf clubs in there, and that's about it. So reassuringly, they've placed a fire extinguisher in the boot, so if the batteries do explode and there's a fire, they've put that in a really accessible space. Now, other things to note at the rear of the car, where the exhausts would normally be, we've got these, well, spaces where the exhaust would be, but instead of the fumes coming out, we've already seen the exhaust is actually down at the front of the car. These are actually speakers, and they play the audio of the sound of the car as you drive along. It's pretty cool. Right, let's have a look under the hood. Like I said, the batteries are housed and squirreled away at the back, but at the front, we've got the engine. So let's have a look at what we've got in here. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed these EVER badges as we've been walking around the car, and they stand for Electric Vehicle Extended Range. So what's interesting about the use of the engine on this car is that it doesn't drive the wheels but turns the generator to convert the energy back into electricity to be used by the two electric motors at the rear of the car. So this is different from a hybrid vehicle which switches from one power source to another. This uses the internal combustion engine to drive the generator, recharge the batteries, and then that drives the wheels. Clever stuff. Now, we can't move on to the interior until I mention something about this paint, because it's absolutely fantastic. It's called Deep Ocean Metallic, and the fleck comes from ground up recycled glass, and it just gives the most wonderful shimmer to the thing wherever you look at it. Sitting behind the steering wheel here, you start to imagine the kind of mood boards that they might have had in their Californian design studio. Lots of oceans and forests and the occasional picture of a spaceship from a 90s sci-fi movie. But as you look around, you can really start to tell that they've committed to the environmentally friendly ethos. The wood here on this panel, for example, is taken from trees that were involved in forest fires. And then this particular car has leather seats, but you can spec it with cloth that comes from upcycled materials. And instead of handles, you've just got these buttons here that say open, so you just push those and the door opens. In between you and the passenger is this massive centre console, and then we've got a few familiar things. We've got the infotainment system, which is pretty standard. A couple of cup holders, and then we've got this like glass cabinet here. And this is quite cool because you've then got this little gear selection down here. So you've got drive, neutral, reverse and park. And when you push each of them, this LED light shoots down through this glass cabinet to kind of indicate which one you've selected. So it does feel quite sort of futuristic. It's in a kind of very sort of Star Trek-y style arrangement. The car does have paddle shifts, but you don't use them in the traditional sense. The car has 3 driving modes. It's stealth, hill and sport. So stealth mode is your normal driving mode. Hill is kind of, as it says, when you're going down the hill and kind of using the car to brake itself and use regen to charge up the batteries. And then sport, clearly sport, click into sport, and then you get the use of the front engine and the battery power combined. We'll have a quick look in the back and then we'll go for a drive. Right, so the back seats, as you can tell, I mean, there is not much headroom owing to this lovely sloping roof, and that's nice, but it just means that there's very little headroom. So if you're short, then that's absolutely fine, or you've got children, small children, that's not a problem at all. Legroom, there isn't a huge amount, but certainly I could be very comfortable in here for short journeys, no problem at all. Again, we've got the massive centre console which comes all the way through the car, so you miss the third rear seat, and instead you've got, well, a great armrest and a couple of cup holders. And again, we've got this gallery view glass here, and then just a couple of controls. So you've actually got heated rear seats, which is quite unusual, and then just the controls for your windows. And that's about it. Oh, other than, this is quite cool. Look, we've got these power sockets. There's a USB and a standard sort of cigarette lighter port there as well. Right, drive time. So the startup procedure in the Fisker is quite simple. You just put your foot on the brake and then press the start button here, which says EVER. Electric vehicle extended range, which is everywhere on the car. Bings on, we can see that the range for the battery says 40 miles, which is probably quite ambitious. The combined range though, using the engine, which then in turn charges the alternator and puts electricity back into the batteries, is 177 miles, so that's plenty. So anyway, we know we've got enough range. Foot on the brake, so we just hit drive in the center console, takes you through neutral, takes the handbrake off, and then that's it, away you go. I've just got the window down now just to listen to the speakers, and it really is really quite cool. And I don't think many other electric cars currently do it. I mean, the Teslas sort of whir away a bit, and I think that they're now starting to integrate this into their new cars, because so many people have made complaints of not hearing cars coming. The instrument gauge is fairly traditional, so on the left hand side I've got my miles an hour. Excellent, thank you. And on the right hand side I've got fuel and battery, so I can see how much petrol I've got in there and then how much charge I've got with the battery. It rides very nicely and it's certainly very comfortable driving through the outskirts of town here, but I wouldn't call it luxury saloon levels of comfort. It's much more a sort of grand tourer. I mean, think sort of BMW 8 Series rather than Mercedes S-Class. And the same can be said for the space, really. I mean, it is quite a big car, quite a long car, but in terms of space, behind you is pretty cramped and actually not much more than you'd find in a standard coupe. So the left panel here, because it's got paddle shifts, but they're not shifting through gears as such. Let's click into sport mode. Does that make any difference? Oh, it certainly makes more of a noise. 0 to 60 is still a very respectable 5.9 seconds, but it could have been faster had it not been for the weight. It's a little bit porky, this car, and so that slows it down a little bit. Certainly not setting any records in sport mode, and I think it's probably most of that 400 horsepower is being used to shift the weight of this thing. So this car was about $102,000 when it was launched, and then a year later Tesla launched the Model S for about $50,000. So makes this quite pricey when you consider that, doesn't it? Visibility coming out of junctions as blind spot is really not helpful at all. What I like about what Fisker are doing here is it takes away any kind of range anxiety, because you're constantly recharging those batteries. So it has a range just on pure battery of only like 30 miles, but that then gets charged up by the petrol engine. So you can go for 260, 270 miles without having to worry. And then you just refuel or plug back in and go again. It's just a shame that Fisker had all that trouble at the start, because this being their first outing, their first car under Fisker Automotive, it's really quite impressive. I'm sure they would have gone on to do great things, but then tragedy struck. They had all of those problems, and here we are, no more Fisker Karma. And actually the Karma does live on, but not being developed by the guys at Fisker. The story of Fisker Automotive is a familiar tale of ambition to change the face of mobility that shines as brightly and sadly for about as long as a magnesium ribbon. It began with successful automotive designer Henrik Fisker, who was responsible for some iconic car designs such as the BMW Z8 and the Aston Martin DB9. Fisker was incredibly ambitious and wanted to create his own car as well as design it. So Fisker Coach Building was launched, and they started building bespoke vehicles based on the Mercedes SL base architecture. In 2007, with funding in place, they were able to begin building their own car, a fully electric luxury saloon. Things looked good when it was launched in 2011, and it was certainly one of the most interesting looking electric cars we had seen, and had some cool, innovative ideas. Sadly though, it wasn't long before the cracks started to appear. 2 product recalls for its batteries, its main supplier going out of business, a hurricane and the loss of 338 vehicles, and a frozen credit line, all in the space of a year, ultimately expedited the downward trajectory to bankruptcy. Thankfully, there is a happy ending, and Fisker has subsequently been resurrected and are now developing a new car, the Fisker Ocean, which is a much more reasonably priced $37,000. Let's hope they have better luck this time round. So the good bits versus the not so good bits. 4 is the styling. I think this thing looks absolutely epic. It's got no range anxiety because you've obviously got this electric vehicle extended range setup, which is brilliant. And then we've got clever features like this solar panel charging on the roof, which helps score it extra points. The not so good bits, well, there are some baffling design decisions like the exhaust placement and the cramped rear cabin. And I suppose if you're splitting hairs, you could say that the infotainment system's a bit outdated. But let's be honest, there are very few cars without the compromises, and especially innovative electric cars of this era. So it comes down to how it makes you feel and how it fits your lifestyle, and that's a very personal choice. But whilst making this video, I've been stopped more times than when I've been filming with any other car. So that says it all really, doesn't it? So if you're looking for something unique and rare that still does its bit for the environment, then this is definitely worth a look. Check out further details of the car and a full gallery of photos over at collectingcars.com. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.